Today I got the Canon EOS R5. Tonight I brought it out here to the field with my beautiful little Peanut. I'm gonna take some photos of her with the R5 and then the one it's replacing for me, my 5D Mark IV, and we're gonna check out how they perform because I literally have no idea and I'm excited to see. All right, here we go. All right, Peanut, are you ready for this? I'm gonna try to take photos here while taking a video. We'll see how this goes. I love the way the shutter sounds on the R5. One thing I didn't like about the Mark IV is that on my lenses, like when I had the 85-1.2 and even the 85-1.4 IS, it would clip the bokeh circles and kind of cut them off because it had a mirror box. So a big reason I actually wanted to go mirrorless is just to make those bokeh circles a little more rounded out. So that's the first test we're gonna do. And here's the 5D Mark IV in the same setting.
All right, let's get into it here. So these again are straight out of camera, no editing, no post-processing. The first thing you're gonna notice when I zoom in is the extra resolution of the EOS R5. So it's not that I'm zooming in more on this image, it's just that it has more pixels so I can zoom in farther. In this photo, I was trying to get a little bit of bokeh in the background just so I could compare how it looks on a mirrorless camera compared to a DSLR. So if I look at these out of focus areas up here, these still maintain their rounded out shape, whereas these get a little cut off. The mirror box on the DSLR will cut off the edge of the bokeh highlights near the edge of the frame. The mirrorless camera doesn't have a mirror, so the bokeh highlights maintain their more rounded shape.
A next improvement I noticed right away is the speed of how quick you can move the autofocus points. So here it is moving on the 5D Mark IV, that's as fast as it goes. And now here's how fast it moves on the R. Can barely even keep it up, so it just moves around much more intuitively.
So if you just look at the accuracy, I shot this at f1.4 with the 85mm, razor sharp, right on the eyelash. If you're coming from a DSLR and you're used to using the focus points in your optical viewfinder and moving them around or focus and recomposing, the difference between going to the R5 with the eye detection is simply incredible. It literally doesn't miss. So here's a couple I put on the 50mm f1.2. I shot all of these at f1.2 and you'll see that her eye is razor focus every single time. With my 5D Mark IV, I always kind of cringed whenever I shot backlit situations because I knew if I was shooting through the optical viewfinder that the camera would hunt for focus. The lens would kind of and would kind of move in and out trying to find the focus. I was shocked when I used the R5 with the head detection that it just tracked her all the way through as she was walking through in this situation and I didn't have one image out of focus.
Have the 35mm on the 5D Mark IV. I have it in live view mode. It can't pick up her face. It's focusing on flowers and other things here. So I'm switching it to single AF points. I'm noticing right away with the R5 it has no problem picking up her face and even her eye this far away while she's looking down. Now let's take a look at the electronic viewfinder because that is one of my favorite features of this. It's beautiful to look through and I can see my exposures live, which is a game changer. And I can put in my histogram eventually and some other features that just make the shooting experience so much more easy. So now we're gonna try to go up into here, see if we can see what I'm seeing through it.
Okay, here are the photos of her spinning around. I wanted to test out how quickly it could autofocus and if it would lose focus as she spun around. like I was seeing on the back of the camera, I'm amazed to see that, yeah, they're all in focus. And as she spun around, it was really cool that it would switch between face detection, head detection, and then back to eye detection, and it kept her in focus here. So well done, R5.
For me, the 5D Mark IV is just a little bit too big for my hand. The R5 immediately just gripped my hand perfectly. Fits great with the thumb there and right where my fingers kind of hit all the buttons there. So I really do like the handling and the grip size of the R5.
When I first saw the images of the R5, I was worried that the buttons that were on the side of my 5D Mark IV would be gone. Then I realized how much smarter the location of them was, because with my 5D Mark IV, I had to tilt my camera down and use two hands to access these buttons and take my hand off my lens. But now with the R5, I can access these buttons while still shooting with one hand on my lens. So for example, the zoom button has been moved from the left side of the camera to right where my thumb is. So I can use that button to punch into 6x zoom or 15x zoom to make sure I nail the focus. The play button and the trash buttons have been placed down here now, which I can also access with one hand so I can review images and delete images through my viewfinder if I wish. The Q button maintains its position. It is taking my brain a little bit as I'm shooting to train my thumb the location of these three. Sometimes I accidentally hit the Q button instead of the info or the magnify, but I'm sure with time I'll figure that out, no problem. Another question I had is, what about these four buttons? I use these buttons to change my ISO, my drive, my autofocus, and my white balance frequently while I'm shooting. I typically have to take the camera off my eye, press the button, and then again, I never could remember which dial, this dial or the back dial, changes which of these two settings per button. Again, I would say it's much improved on the R5. I can access all of those buttons while shooting by pressing the M function button to be able to change those. So while I still have the camera up to my eye, I can change all of the white balance, the drive mode, the ISO. It is much quicker and much easier, and it doesn't interrupt my shooting to be able to change those settings.
For the first time, I'm going to try out the in-body stabilization, which the R5 has and none of the other Canon bodies up to this point have had. So let's give it a shot here. I am shooting one-handed here, very unstable. F5, let's see what it does. That one had no problem. Let's take the shutter down a little bit more. Here we are at a 15th of a second. Let's see if we can do that. I'm pretty shaky just holding it right now. That's very impressive, especially how much my hand was shaking there. Okay, can I handle an 1/8 of a second then? Let's try that. Play, zoom in, what do we get? There's a little blurry, given how shaky I was. Oh, that's some shit. Without recording it, I used two hands and just stood, and I was just able to take a 1/3 of a second exposure, no problem, with a 35mm that doesn't have image stabilization on it. So that's really cool. If you haven't already seen the video I did on the adapter I recommend for the R5, I'll have maybe a link for you up here, and there'll be links down in the description where you can pick that up. I highly recommend getting the one with the control ring on there, so that if you customize any of your RF lenses, you can also customize all your EF lenses, which will work just incredibly. We are going to try out some high ISO now. I don't know if I've ever gone up to ISO 8000 on a wedding day. Usually 3200, 6400. It's what I'll ever use.
But let's zoom in here. We'll check them out. Pretty similar grain actually. Like I wouldn't be able to tell much of a difference. And the R5 image is, it's got more megapixels, so it's zoomed in, but the grain has a very similar feel to it.
Now we are going to try out ISO, let's go crazy, 25,600. Where are you going there, Peanut?
Here we are at 25,600. We're going to zoom in. It's getting a little more grainy. But actually, let's see if we just do a little noise reduction here, how we'll clean up. Yeah, we lose a little bit of the sharpness there. But in a pinch, if you needed this, you didn't have a flash or something, doing a sparkler exit or something at the end of the day, I think I would actually be okay throwing it to 25,000.
And here is ISO 3200 on the R5.
If I zoom in, that is completely usable. Very little grain.
The next scenario I'm going to test here, I'm going to put my son in the direct sun, and something I never do here, underexposing the shot, and then just seeing how much recovery can I get between the R5 and the 5D. Right, so here we are.
We've got the exposure well under, and I wanted to just see if we push this, how far we can push it before we see any kind of image quality loss. So that looks great. Let's check out the 5D4 image. We'll push that 5 stops here. Here we have the two side by side, and let's go ahead and go into the corners here and see what we can see. So starting in the top corner, the 5D4 image, it's starting to have that color loss. The shadows aren't looking as good as they are on the R5 image. Yeah, up here you can start seeing some of those lines showing up and the color noise is there. Your shirt looks kind of purpley just from that push. So not that I would need this all the time. I probably would never do that, but it is really fun to see that Canon worked hard on their new sensor and kind of brought it up and gave us more play that we can do in the files.
The next thing we're testing out is the tracking ability and how it can track a subject. So I have it in AI servo right now, and with the eye detection on the R5, then I'm going to switch and do 2 different tracking modes I used to use on my 5D Mark IV. Here we go with the Mark IV. Let's see how this tracks. Now we're going to try this same scenario using the optical viewfinder.
All right, you guys. So this next test, I was just testing out, if I just had it in face and eye detection and just let it go, could it track him? And I shot all these at f1.4. These are the R images. Every single shot is tack sharp on his eye. Like, I don't even know how that's possible to do that. Like, we're at f1.4 with an 85mm lens. It is so shallow. And I mean, he is perfectly in focus in every single photo. It's just making my lenses, my EF lenses, look all the better. It's just really, really cool that that now I don't have to like take extra photos just thinking like, oh no, some of them might be out of focus, because they are all in focus. And now we're looking at the back of the 5D4. I kind of just had it in the same live view just to see what it would do. And you guys saw it wasn't finding his face or anything, especially at this point. So blurry, blurry, blurry. There is our first one in focus. Second one in focus. Pretty much in focus here. It's usable, usable, usable. Good. And then we did this take here with through the optical viewfinder, and I didn't have all of my autofocus points on. There's our first one in focus. That's out of focus, out of focus, out of focus. Back focused on his ear. And I know, having used the 5D4 since 2016, I definitely could have got my hit rate higher. It was just that I was trying to record and just put it kind of in an auto kind of mode. It does show, if anything, that, I mean, in a fully face and eye detection, this R5 can make it very easy for you to get all your shots in focus, where you're gonna have to work harder with your 5D Mark IV to get the shots in focus.
All right, now let's look at something that seems to be missing that used to be on the 5D Mark IV that I don't see on the R5. So it has 2 card slots, which is awesome.
and it gives me the ability to shoot RAW onto both cards. However, it doesn't give me the ability to shoot RAW onto one and then compress RAW onto the other card. On my 5D Mark IV, I would shoot RAW onto one card, and then I would put a medium RAW onto the second, which gave me another RAW backup without the full file size. I thought the camera was going to include a medium RAW or a small RAW file type. I only see the large, medium, and small JPEG file types. The nice thing about the compressed RAWs is the file size is a lot smaller, so on this memory card that is 64 gigabytes, I'd be able to get 2,571 compressed RAWs or 1,276 regular RAW files. Down the road, when memory cards become a little bit cheaper for these CF Express cards, I'll definitely upgrade and get a much larger card. But for now, I'm kind of sneaking by with a smaller memory card. And so this compressed RAW is a very nice option I really haven't noticed any difference in the image quality. The second thing I'm kind of wondering about is when I press the shutter button, the screen goes black on the first frame, but then doesn't on the continuous frames. When I put the camera in live view on my 5D Mark IV and shoot in servo mode with the preview turned off, it doesn't go black like that. And same on my R, it doesn't go black when I take a frame. So I'm wondering on the R5, why does the first frame go black when you're shooting like that? And if there's a way that I could turn that off.
The Canon 5D Mark IV came out in 2016, and today it is still an amazing camera. You will be able to make phenomenal images with that camera. But for me, I walked away from my first night of shooting with the R5 completely blown away. This camera isn't just a small upgrade, it is a massive overhaul with all kinds of new features, bells and whistles that work incredibly. It's intuitive, fast, and responsive. Since filming this video, I've actually already photographed a full 10-hour wedding and an engagement session. I have 2 more weddings this weekend, and I could not be more excited to put it back to its paces. Any of these products I'll have links to in the description. If you want to use those links, it really helps me out. We have a lot more fun videos coming for you. So if you haven't already, please hit that subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up if the video was helpful for you. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you next time. Okay, we just wrapped up our first ever photos with the Canon EOS R5. And all I can say is that after waiting for this thing for probably over 5 years, I've been anticipating this camera. I had really high expectations and really high hopes for it, and it exceeded all of them crazy far. This camera is super responsive, very easy to shoot with, and the image quality is just unheard of.